Chapter 14 in The Return of the Indian, Red Men, Red Coats. Bringing 40 Indians to life sounds like quite an undertaking, but it took a remarkably short time to accomplish. They did a few first, just to be on the safe side, but when the first half dozen had clambered out of the cupboard and were at once greeted by Little Bear, who regaled them in his strange language, which they all seemed to understand, Omri and Patrick didn't delay further. "Let's put all the rest in at once," said Patrick excitedly, and this time Omri made no objections. Soon the sea tray was jammed with men milling around, sitting on Patrick's fence, admiring Little Bear's pony, exclaiming in dismay at the ruined longhouse, gazing covertly at bright stars, and examining the paintings on the side of the teepee. One or two tried to enter this, but Little Bear barred the way. Boone was in there. None of them knew how the Indians might react to him, so they decided to hide him. The new Indians didn't pay any attention to the boys at first, or to anything in what to them was the distance, and everything on the seed tray was in scale with them, and they soon settled down into rows, cross-legged, to listen to what Little Bear had to say. He dragged the matchbox bed into position before the teepee and stood on it, making it a platform. From there he addressed them in a loud, commanding tone for several minutes. Omri and Patrick sat well back, shaded by bushes. "It was a good idea of yours to be outdoors," whispered Patrick. "Seems more natural, and there aren't huge bits of furniture and so on to worry them." Omri didn't react to this praise for his idea. If they had stayed inside, Boone's horse would still be alive. Omri didn't react to his... They watched, and after a while, Little Bear stopped speaking and beckoned imperiously to the boys, who crawled forward on their knees until they hung over the seed tray. Little Bear pointed at them dramatically, and all the Indians turned to look. Their reactions were curiously unsensational. Some uttered muted cries, one or two leapt to their feet, but then sank down again after glancing at Little Bear and seeing him unafraid. Evidently he had given them some explanation for the presence of giants in their midst, which they had no difficulty in accepting. The Great Spirit's business, no doubt. Omri couldn't help smiling at Little Bear's obvious pride at having such beings in his command. It clearly gave him a lot of prestige in the eyes of these tribesmen he was hoping to lead into battle. After a few more words to his audience, Little Bear turned to the boys. "Make now guns," he ordered. They knelt irresolute. Omri had never really taken to the idea of Indians running amok with machine guns, hand grenades, and artillery. Anything could happen, especially if they got overexcited. But Little Bear was scowling horribly at their hesitation. "Make now guns now," he thundered. "Little Bear, give word to Brave." "Oh dear," said Patrick ironically. "That does it, then. I'd better fetch them." He jumped to his feet, and Omri said, "While you're in the house, ask my mom to give you something for us to eat, for them to eat. Anything else you can think of?" "Yes, bring some horses for Boone to choose from." "One thing at a time," said Patrick. "Boone had better stay out of sight." And he pushed off through the bushes. While he was gone, Omri thought he ought to have a word with Little Bear. "These now guns, as you call them, are very, very powerful. And they're complicated. They can't be used without special training." Little Bear curled his lip in scorn. "I see what soldier do. Point gun, pull trigger, like gun French, English soldiers fight with Indian. But kill more, shoot many, many." Little Bear made a noise like a chatter of a machine gun. The other Indians reacted with excitement. "But the bigger ones, Omri show how?" "You don't think I know, do you? As you keep reminding me, I'm only a boy." Little Bear frowned. The rows of seated Indians below him seemed to sense his doubt and began murmuring to each other uneasily, and Little Bear raised his hand to silence them. "Omri put now soldiers in box. Him show." Omri considered. There was actually no option to bringing some modern soldiers to life, however briefly, because their plastic figures were attached to their weapons, and Omri's plan had been to do as he had done once before when he wanted a bow and arrow for Little Bear. He had brought that old Indian to life and then taken his weapons from him, meaning to transform him at once back into plastic, but he had promptly dropped dead of a heart attack. Omri thought that some artillery sergeant might be made of sterner stuff. Perhaps it would be worth a try. "What about these?" he asked, holding up a soldier from the time of George III, who, according to a verse Omri recalled from somewhere, ought to never have occurred. "Try," said Little Bear tersely. Feeling a bit guilty at doing without Patrick, Omri put the 5 scarlet-clad soldiers into the cupboard. At once the clattering of metal on metal announced that the soldiers and their mounted officers were ready to emerge. "Little Bear, you better go in there with them. Better if you talk to them first and decide if you want them." "Good." Omri opened the door a crack, and Little Bear slipped over the edge of the seed tray, straight into the cupboard. Omri put his ear to the opening of the top to listen. Little Bear began at once to harangue the British officer in his broken English. Omri heard the word French and the word kill, but he couldn't make out much more until the shrill bark of an English voice cut him short. "Who do you think you are, giving orders to an officer of His Majesty's 20th American Regiment, you filthy savage?" There was deathly silence, and then Little Bear shouted, I know, savage. I Iroquois chief. Iroquois fight on side of English soldier. English happy have Indian help. Brave spill blood and English quarrel. Now I ask help from English? Why redcoat give insult? There was a brief pause, and then the English voice said with an icy contempt, Insolent bounder, kill him, Smithers. Army put his hand on the door to slam it shut, but another voice spoke. Is that wise, sir? After all, we have used them in the past. Plenty more where he came from. But if he's a chief, sir, it might lead to some trouble. Of course, Smithers, if you're squeamish, I'll do it myself. Here, come back, you little blackguard. But it was too late. Little Bear had already slipped silently over the bottom rim of the cupboard and was throwing his weight against the door. Army was very happy to assist him, and in short order the arrogant British redcoats were reduced to their plastic condition again. Little Bear, his eyes slits of rage and every tooth in his head bared, gave Army a look of reproach. Army felt he was being blamed just because he was English too. Surely they're not all like that. Some English know better than French, was all Little Bear had to say. Braves fight alone. Just then Patrick came crashing back through the rhododendrons, and he had a tray in his hand on which were 2 glasses of milk, 2 packets of salted peanuts, and a couple of red apples. Also a paper bag containing the Now soldiers. Army had only hoped they might do something to redeem the character of that British army in the eyes of the Indian. There was a pleasant interlude while they fed the Indians, and they crushed some of the nuts between 2 or more or less clean stones, and served the bits on platters made from the round leaves of a nasturtium. Patrick bit a piece off one of the apples and broke it up small, while Army refilled and filled the toothpaste caps, which were passed reverently, from hand to hand along the rows of seated braves. Among them, they nearly put away half a glass of milk. Boone, who had been peeping from behind the flap of the teepee, sent a private message with bright stars, suggesting a bit of the hard stuff should be added to the milk to put fire in their belly, but Bright Star solemnly explained. Boone evidently felt it would be no bad thing if these Indians did go a bit local, but Army and Patrick agreed that everyone should be keeping a clear head. Then it was time to bring the modern soldiers to life again and see what could be done about guns. After consultation with Little Bear, they began with a hulking Royal Marine soldier, a corporal, kneeling behind his machine gun. He was the one who had sprayed Army with bullets, so Army had a sort of a warped affection for him. We can't risk Little Bear again, said Army. He had told Patrick what had happened with the 18th century soldiers. A modern soldier would probably be just as unbelieving about an Indian as he would be about finding himself tiny. We'll just have to hope he can accept it somehow. After all, he's seen us once. The first shock is over. Come on, no good putting it off. And Patrick slipped the corporal into the cupboard. We'll have to watch it, because last time I did this, they all just started shooting like mad the second the door opened. So they opened the door the merest crack at first, and Army put his mouth to it and said, Don't shoot. We want to talk to you. A very ripe, soldierly oath answered him, followed by, I've gone off my trolley again. Just don't shoot, okay? And Army slowly swung the cupboard door open. The corporal had gotten up, and he gazed around, and the machine gun gleamed in the sun, oiled and ready for action. Blimey, now I'm outdoors? What the heck's going on? Army went into a spiel. Of course, it must seem incredible, but the fact is, for the moment, you become small. You can tell your grandchildren about it, and it's going to get even more interesting. What we want is for you to tell your friends of ours, or tell some friends of ours who are your size, how to work a machine gun. And, are they planning to shoot with it if it's not a rude answer? Well, you see, but it was too complicated, and Army looked helplessly at Patrick. Who do you shoot with it? Said Patrick. The man gave a barking laugh. The Queen's enemies and anyone else who looks sideways at the Royal Marines. And are you an expert on guns? I mean, all kinds. You could say so. We're trained to handle just about anything and anybody. The boys gave each other a quick look. This suited them. Right, said Patrick briskly. Here's your chance to prove it. I'm going to put you and your machine gun in front of a bunch of men, and you're going to demonstrate how to use it. You'll go through it once and then let some of them try it. Only be careful. We don't want anybody hurt. This is only a training exercise. The corporal's face had gone rigid, and he stood at attention while Patrick spoke, and then he gave a smart salute. Sir, what's your name, Corporal? Fickets, sir. Corporal Royal Marine Willie Fickets. How much ammunition do you have, Corporal? 300 rounds, sir. Don't waste any. Sir, now don't be scared when I pick you up. The corporal's Adam's apple jumped as he swallowed, but his face didn't change. Sir. Patrick carried the man, stiff as a tiny pencil, between finger and thumb and set him down, still at attention, on the platform. At the sight of him there was a buzz of astonished interest among the Indians, most of whom leapt to their feet. The corporal allowed his eyes to rove briefly across a mass of half-naked redskins. His Adam's apple did a jig in his throat, and his eyes popped, and then his rigid expression came back. Meanwhile, Army had carefully lifted the machine gun out of the cupboard and set it beside him. The nearness of this weapon seemed to restore him. Begin, Corporal, said Patrick, who found he rather liked giving orders he knew would be instantly obeyed. Right, men, Fickets barked. Pay attention. I'm about to demonstrate the workings of this here weapon, a marvel of military science. I will first break it down and then put it back together again. Never mind, Fickett, said Patrick. Just show him how to shoot with it. The corporal instantly changed tack. I will first demonstrate the method of firing. He dropped to one knee. He aimed over the heads of the crowd and fired off the short but noisy burst. Now realize, these guys don't even have guns. So a machine gun, first of all, it shoots much further, right? And you can shoot many bullets at one time, which is what's so dangerous about a machine gun. So this is totally different from anything they would have ever seen before. Bullets whistled through the air and caused a flurry among the rhododendron leaves. The Indians watched this impassively. They didn't seem to grasp what had happened. But Little Bear leapt up beside Fickets and shouted something, and he must have told them that each bang represented a bullet or, with luck, a dead enemy, and at that, the Indians jumped up and started yelling excitedly and pushing toward the platform. Almost at once, a fight broke out among all those wanting to be the first to try the gun. Corporal Fickett stared at the scrimmage in dismay. You better give these blighters some orders, sir, he said to Patrick above the uproar. Going on like this it won't do, sir. It's your gun, Corporal. You give the orders. Me, sir. Ain't there an officer about, sir, or at least a sergeant? The scrimmage below was getting wilder. One burly Indian had already laid out 2 others cold and was scrambling up on the platform. You're in charge, Corporal. Go on. Tell them to behave. They'll listen to you. After a baffled moment, Fickett saw that the Indian had laid his hands on the gun and was swinging the barrel wildly in all directions, and this galvanized him into action. Take your hands off that gun, he bellowed. His voice was not that of a corporal, but of a regimental sergeant major. All at once, the howling mob of Indians fell silent. Even Little Bear looked impressed. The Indian at the gun found himself hiked upright by his hair, all Fickets had to get a hold of, and flung off the platform. Can't go grabbing the guns without permission, right? Now then, you bunch of horrible little men, roared Fickets. You touch this here weapon when I say you touch it, not before. Do you understand that? Or you will find yourselves wishing that your mothers had never met your fathers. Is that clear? Do you know what that means? If your parents never met, you wouldn't be born, right? There was a profound silence, and even the birds in the bushes seemed stunned. Wow, breathed Patrick, that's telling them. Corporal Fickets proved a godsend. He knew a great deal about military hardware, not only machine guns, and as fast as Omri put the soldiers into the cupboard and made their weapons real and removed them from their owners and placed them on the matchbox platform, Fickets instructed his now obedient students how to work them. Soon they had 2 field guns, 10 hand grenades, 3 bazookas, 2 more machine guns, and a small pile of automatic rifles. The Indians appeared to like these best. When they discovered that they could actually run while firing them, it took all Corporal Ficket's newfound authority to keep any kind of order. And even so, it was a miracle that no one got hurt during the training. The boys set up stripped twigs and rounded pieces of trimmed bark as targets, and then there was a limited amount of ammunition, and every Indian was given only 5 rounds to practice with. Fickets was uneasy about the larger guns. Firing artillery, sir, ain't something you do to anyhow. Any halfwit can blast off with a handgun, sir, and throw a grenade, but if you take my advice, you'll leave the ordinary ordnance pieces out of there. You need a properly trained crew for artillery, sir, not rabble like this lot. If that's your advice, Corporal, we'll follow it, said Patrick. Corporal Ficket's expression did not change, but he seemed to swell up inside of his uniform like a miniature pouter pigeon. Thank you, sir, he said. Little Bear was getting impatient. Braves no, shoot now guns, he said urgently. Time go back. Omri had been, he now realized, secretly dreading this moment. There was his Indian, not yet fully recovered, no matter what anyone said, about to be plunged into a life or death situation. But he knew there was no way to avoid it. People had to do what they had to do. However, that didn't mean Bright Stars had to go into danger. Can you leave Bright Stars here? Omri asked. Yes, said Little Bear. Leave wife. Omri, take care. Bring old white she-bear when time come for Little Bear's son. But no let stab with claw and backside. So he doesn't want he doesn't want Bright Stars to get a shot in her bottom from the matron, the old white she-bear. Omri and the Indian looked at each other for a moment. Good luck, said Omri. Need help from great spirits, then fight well, win against French, Algonquin enemy. Did the Algonquins help attack your village? Algonquin lead, French follow, now go back, take vengeance. I wish I could see it, said Omri. And me, said Patrick, who had overheard. It took some time to assemble the now heavily armed Indian troop and prepare them to leave. Bright Stars directed Omri to bring her some flowers, which she crushed in her hands, producing a colored pulp, with which she smeared Little Bear's face in streaks. Others were decorating themselves with mixtures of mud and some other colors that they had with them. And every time a bird flew overhead, they all looked up apprehensively. Omri thought they were afraid it might attack them, as indeed it might, but the boys had been there to guard them. But Little Bear, after one such overpass, said, "Bad omen if shadow fall on braves before battle." The last Indians were leaving Bright Star's pool, smearing patterns of mud on their torsos. Omri looked at the now murky water of the coffee jar lid. It had a reddish look where the sinking sun caught it. He turned away, glad he didn't believe in omens. Is he worried about sending them back to fight?